We're still here at the NJGOP Summit in Atlantic City, and we have South Jersey's most famous politician with us, who I have watched for well over a decade since South Jersey's been in existence, but in the last couple of years he's come to national prominence when he switched from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party in objection to impeachment. Congressman Jeff Van Drew, it's great to see you again.
It's great to see you as well, Matt. Thank you for having me.
I'm sorry to say that the most recent controversy involving you that's created national news is one that probably gave your family a good deal of disquiet. There's a columnist for the Ocean City Sentinel.
That's correct.
I don't know if he's written for them since, I sure hope not, but apparently he's pretty prolific. He made some pretty horrific comments, not just about you, but also about your wife, and even let what you've called a death threat on your voicemail. And I think I read recently that Ocean City may actually be in the process of removing them as their paper of record. Very disappointing, being somebody who spent a lot of time at the Jersey Shore, read that paper for a number of years, but here's where I'm going with this. When you and I first talked after you switched parties, one of the reasons you gave me, Congressman, is that the left was just losing its mind, and you didn't feel at home in that party anymore. You switched parties, you've gotten reelected, but it doesn't seem like the left is getting any less crazy.
And not at all. In fact, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit as we go along, even more so with what's going on. There's sometimes decisions you make in life, and afterward you're not sure, did I do the right thing, didn't I do the right thing? A lot of people come up to me and say, gee, are you okay? Are you glad you became a Republican? More than ever. And I always would say that, some of the strongest Republicans, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, were Democrats before. They really know. It's almost like you've gained this experience of hard knocks and really learned going through that process what you are not. You may have initially thought you were, and initially the party was a lot different. And as we always say, and I quote Reagan all the time, I didn't leave the party left me, and it's really true. This Democratic Party, whether people liked it or not, say 10, 15, 20 years ago, that we have now is nothing at all like the party was then. This is truly becoming a radical socialist party that is going to take this country down. This is really scary stuff. Just for a minute, if I could talk about the death threat stuff. Unfortunately, when you run for office, especially if it's Congress, U.S. Senate, President, Vice President, you're going to get death threats. It's a shame. It shouldn't be that way, and it comes with the territory. I bargained for that. I knew that. Who didn't bargain for all this stuff is my wife, my children, my grandchildren. And what was particularly disturbing about all of it was that, real quickly, the story, February 28th, I'm in D.C., she's home, we get a message on our voicemail. See, we have everything recorded and in print, which is kind of different and interesting. And this individual gets on and says, I'm a freelance reporter. I do a lot of work for the Sentinel Ledger in Ocean City, which isn't the biggest paper in the world, but not the smallest. Thousands and thousands of copies go out.
Something anybody that vacations at the Jersey Shore
reads.
Even if you don't, you read it every summer when you go down.
Exactly. And he said, I just want to let you know that you're a traitor, and, he's a very extreme Democrat, and blah, 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 and all these things. Well, first of all, if you're a freelance reporter, you're supposed to be, which is a joke these days, you're supposed to be objective. But secondly, and then he says, I will get you out of office, with a lot of emphasis, and he said, or you will be dead. So okay. So
and said it, for anyone that hasn't listened to it yet.
It's creepy.
It's a very even tone.
Yes.
It's not somebody that's screaming and you can imagine them spitting into the receiver. And the even, calm tone made it worse.
It was very creepy.
It was almost Hannibal Lecter-esque.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah.
So we reported to the Capitol Police. Capitol Police worked with the Ocean City Police, who were pressing charges. And I think, okay, that's it. Because that's not really the big part of the story. Here's the big part of the story that people, you'd almost think I was making this up, but I'm not. That's the sad part of it. A few days later, the Ocean City Sentinel Ledger comes out, and there's an op-ed in it. In fact, eventually there were two op-eds, right? And everybody knows an op-ed is something that, the editor looks at and the publisher looks at, and it's something that's kind of official. The paper may not agree with it, or it may, but it's an official thing for the paper. It's not just, it wasn't a letter to the editor that some crazy way squeaked in. This was, an official op-ed with all the fancy scrolling around it. Yeah, exactly. You couldn't miss it. And you couldn't miss the content of it because it was so full, and forgive me, but of filth and of anger and of hate and of destruction. So it talked about, one of the things was, again, that I committed treason, and the penalty for treason was execution. May God help my soul. Things that, again, were very creepy and like that. But here's the part that got bad. And he said, we all know that Donald Trump liked to put his hand in between women's legs, and that, Congressman Van Drew never, said anything about that or didn't care about that or thought it was fine, all of which is nonsense. And he said, so I'm wondering how he's going to feel when I come to his home and put my hand in between his wife's legs, pick her up, and slam her down on the hood of her car. How will she like the tickle? And then talks about how he's going to storm with radical friends of his my home and compromise my children, my wife, my grandchildren.
And this is not some random blog on the deep
exactly.
Of the web. This is a relatively well-known newspaper in one of our major short towns.
Exactly. Printed thousands of copies. People are reading this stuff and thinking, what's going on? And so there's a couple things bad. One, my wife and family never bargained for this. My daughter really was worried. She's got 2 babies. Why should my daughter go through this? She didn't run for office. She didn't bargain this. Secondly, is this what the radical left now wants to make the new bar? Is this going to be the new standard that in op-eds and in writing in newspapers or online or wherever, we're actually going to threaten people's lives because they have a different opinion? That's the problem we have right now. And my message to Republicans and to moderates and to even Democrats who were more conservative, there's still a few, my message to you is don't be afraid. Because they're going to try to scare you any way they can. They're going to scare you that maybe if you speak out, you're going to lose your job. They're going to scare you that if you say something that isn't right with what they want, you're going to get a bad mark or a bad grade. They're going to scare you that your business is going to fail because you believe something. And you know what? It's not true. There's a lot of good Americans out there, and I always talk about companies like Hobby Lobby or companies like Chick-fil-A that absolutely have a certain standard and a certain belief, and they do great. They're doing really, really well business-wise. So people aren't worried about that, and you can say what you want very often. Not everybody. One other quick story. I'm getting my hair cut the other day. This is just typical. Getting my hair cut, lady comes over and says, man, I really like what you're saying. I like what you're doing. I support you. She says, I wrote online that I did and did put in my Facebook. She said, I got attacked so hard. Never in my life. It was just like people beating me up, going after me. And she said, that didn't even bother me. But if I even begin, she teaches at a university. She said, if I even begin to mention it in the university, I know that I'm going to lose my job. That's not America. That's not the America that we know and love. That's not the America we believe in. The America we believe in said you could have any opinion, any idea, that a good intellectual exchange of ideas is important. So I guess the problem is they're trying to take our freedoms away from us. They're trying to take away Second Amendment rights that you can't because they're afraid of the guns. And they don't want people to own guns anymore. That's ultimately, even with the Supreme Court, with the idea of those who do want to pack it, what they want to do. They're trying to take our freedom of speech away. This is no joke anymore. I never was, but this is really serious stuff. And you look at the bills they're doing and the way they're doing them and the actions they're taking every week. Every week when I was in before...
I don't know how you do it, honestly, because Nancy Pelosi's current caucus, even though it shrunk after the last cycle, has gotten crazier than anything that I think we've ever seen in the history of this republic with some of the proposals. And now I know an issue that's near and dear to your heart. When we first spoke back in 2019 after you switched parties, defund the police felt like a fringe movement. Now it's become a mainstream movement in this country.
You're correct.
And even though certain cities around our country that have initially defunded the police have now quickly reversed course as shootings have increased, murders have increased, crime has increased. They're continuing to use it as a pet issue. Do you get the sense down in Washington, D.C., when you talk to colleagues, that even some of the Democrats recognize this is crazy, but somehow they're locked into following the fringe elements of their base?
Yes. And I also get the sense that, but they're afraid. They're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to speak out.
They're afraid of being canceled by their own self.
Exactly. And if you notice the vote totals, and you're a smart guy, I know you follow all this stuff, even a few years ago, there would be a considerable, maybe half a dozen, even a dozen sometimes, Democrats that would say, hey, we're not just going for whatever the particular thing was. She is whipping. For those that don't understand, whipping means you're really getting people to do what you want them to do and pushing them. She is personally whipping the floor. She is personally getting out there. And you just watch the big board where the vote tallies are, and you'll see 1, 2, 3 votes come over to the Republican side, to our side, because it's a crazy thing that they're doing on the Dem side, and then all of a sudden you'll see them 1, 2, 3 go back. So there's been virtually no, Jared Golden once in a while has moved over, but generally there's been no movement anymore. It's all, every single Democrat is voting the same way.
For those of us that have never been in Congress, which is most of us, don't understand how it works. Someone casts an independent vote. Does Nancy Pelosi or one of her lieutenants go over to them on the floor and say, hey, you better fix that, or else
Correct.
you're not getting support?
That's almost exactly right. They'll go over and say, what are you doing? We have to all stick together on this. This is this is one of the, the foundations of the party and things like that. And it's really going to hurt you, and you're going to be there all by yourself, and you're not going to have similar to the things that were happening to me and why I changed. You're not going to have the support. So then that person runs up to the front of the House, and you'll see where everybody's sitting up there, and goes to one of the clerks and says, well, and actually they have the change cards out now, and just takes a card, and as long as it's within the allotted time, changes their vote and puts it in, and then the vote changes on the board. The initial vote is electronic. The change is actually done manually.
And is the answer to the Jeff Van Drew success that you've encountered, that you've generated for yourself, every one for the last couple of years, simply to stand up to cancel culture and refuse to allow the media and the culture to cancel you? Because, I actually have to laugh, and you're probably amused too, with some of the articles that were recently for the mainstream outlets. It's not, Jeff Van Drew got reelected and he's very popular and he's doing great work. It's, how does this guy keep getting elected? They cannot believe it. And I noticed recently, I forget whether it was the DNC or the DCCC, they did not include you on their initial 2022 target list. That's got to say something, yet they continue to use you in your fundraising appeals. They want to try to raise money off the fact that there's still some Democrats that are annoyed that you left the party.
Exactly.
Is that the answer? Just say, no, I'm here, I'm going to follow what my people want me to do that elected me and what my conscience dictates, not what the culture wants me to do?
It is the answer. I think the answer for people who are elected and are out there and are Democrats and in their heart now know that things are being done, they're just wrong. They're anti-American, they're anti-freedom. And I think you have to sit down with yourself. And that's essentially what I did. And say, you know what, if I don't want to do this anymore, that's fine. But don't be a lie. Don't cheat the people that voted for you, and have courage. I mean, we're Americans and we should be a courageous people, and if you are an elected person, especially in Congress or the Senate or, God help us, the president, you should have a lot of courage. You've got to be willing to say, I'm going to do what I think is right by my people. And I don't care how harsh, and it is harsh, Matt. I mean, you see it. I mean, I get ripped up, every day. For example, I raised a decent amount of money for a Republican because we don't have the money that, quite frankly, these billionaire Democrats have.
And certainly now with all these corporations,
exactly,
woke switching allegiances,
which disgusts me beyond belief.
The party of big business. That's never been true.
Less true. It is. We're the party of small and medium business, of hardworking people, of blue-collar people, of people who innately know that America is a good place.
It's a populist conservative party.
That's exactly what I am.
We're Main Street.
Yep.
A small business owner. The person that's holding down. We just talked to Councilman Jesse Kurtz from Atlantic City.
Yes, good guy.
All the folks here in his town that used to work 3 jobs to provide a middle-class lifestyle for their family. Now they've been unable to do it with these COVID restrictions.
Yep.
That's what we're fighting for.
Absolutely. We're fighting for, and this will be a surprise, but let me finish it out, immigrants who believe in the rule of law and do it the right way and get online and really work hard to become an American. Those are some of the best Americans ever. But now we're just opening
anti-illegal.
Absolutely.
You know that better than anyone. Yeah.
You know why? Because they have to pay $800 for the U.S. to even take a look at them and give them a chance. They have to hire a lawyer. They have to get at the back of the line. And that's all fine because they're willing to do it so much. They do work 2 and 3 jobs in order to try to be able to have that great American opportunity. But what do? We just open the border, let everybody spill in, sick people, people that are involved with a drug cartel, people that are literally buying and selling little children, people who are sexually abusing and physically abusing these little children, and you're going to tell me that is a more humane way to deal with immigration than the way President Trump did, where he had agreements with the Northern Triangle and Mexico and had them held there where they were relatively safe and okay, and even some of them worked there and was building a wall. And whether you call it a wall, whether you call it a border, let me give the news to everybody. You cannot have a strong nation if you don't have borders, period. You just can't let everybody from everywhere come in.
Fundamental rule of law.
Yes.
That we have to have rules and they have to be applied equally.
Yep.
Everybody has to be equal under the law. When you carve out special exceptions for special people based upon what your political interests are, then you've got a banana republic. You don't have a republic that we fought for to maintain over the course of decades and centuries.
And that doesn't mean that you're racist, and you shouldn't be afraid to speak out about it, even though somebody is just going to use that racist label, which absolutely has nothing to do with it. It has to do with loving the country, and it just gets so old. I mean, I was amazed just going to Georgia. Now, I got the bill. I actually read it. I said, okay, man, I don't want people to tell me. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to look at this thing.
Probably put you in the top 1% of Congress
people
who actually read legislation.
And there's nothing racist in the bill.
No.
There's nothing there. All they're saying is that you need an ID. For God's sake, what don't you need an ID for in today's times? And to literally, in my mind, insult black people and say, well, they're essentially saying they're not capable of getting an ID.
I'm so glad you said that. What is more racist than low expectations?
Exactly. Of course they are, and they know it. And that's why, even though the majority of black people are Democrats, the majority of them still believe in the ID. Yeah. They definitely do, a strong majority. I mean, we're just doing things that make no sense. Just briefly, I mean, the COVID bill, only 9% of it went for COVID. Do you know that we spent all kinds of money abroad on all kinds of foreign aid with that money, people's taxpayers' money, gender study? Yeah. What is that?
Thank God that when people in Atlantic County, where we are right now, are out of work because of Phil Murphy, we're paying for gender studies
in Pakistan.
It gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling when my head hits the pillow.
It gives me a feeling. I'll tell you that. It isn't warm and fuzzy.
I have to ask you about that too, because I know you're on a tight schedule today, and I don't want Ron Filan, your campaign manager, to beat me up. He's a very tough guy. Very tough guy.
He is in his own way. You're not kidding.
That's right.
He's a good guy.
Phil Murphy, who we were talking about your detractors, one of the most vocal. He was very butthurt that you switched parties because I think it reflected poorly on him in National Democrat circles. He's up for re-election. You just the other day endorsed Jack Ciattarelli, who's a Republican frontrunner for the nomination. Just wanted to ask you, A, why'd you endorse Jack Ciattarelli? B, what do you think Jack's chances look like at this point heading into November? We're still a few months out, a lot to play out, but we're getting closer.
We are getting closer. So we know it's a deeply blue state, and we know this isn't easy. I supported Jack because I think Jack, he's a New Jersey guy all the way. He's a smart guy. Real quick story, I met Jack first initially. We both won a Chamber of Commerce award, and he won it, and both of us went and spoke. And I was driving back with my chief of staff, and I, honest to God, true story, said, this is a guy. He hadn't run for anything, even the first term yet.
Oh, so this was before he was even in the Assembly?
Yeah, this was early on when he was in the Assembly.
Oh, he was in the Assembly. So were you already a state senator, or were you in the Assembly?
I was in the Senate, I believe.
Senate,
yes, I was. Yes, I was. I was in the Senate, and so I say to my chief of staff, you know what? this is a guy who could be governor of New Jersey. I mean, he's smart, he speaks well, he gets it, and I think that's true. And I think in order to have a chance to win here, you've got to be a moderate because it's so blue up north. And I want to be realistic. This is what I say to people. And I know some people didn't like Chris Christie. I got it. I don't even know where he's right. But was it better under Chris Christie than it is now with Murphy? It was. It really was in my mind. So to have a Republican who is a moderate is fine because they've got to appeal to their constituents and they have to win, and we're going to be able to make so much change and do so many good things, and he's going to be able to work with guys like me. You know, it's not easy for me when you've got...
Well, to your point, though, about being a moderate, I think historically you and Jack are pretty darn conservative.
Yes.
It's just maybe some people would now classify somebody like Jack as a moderate because maybe there's one or two issues where someone like me disagrees with them. But when you put him up against somebody like Nancy Pelosi,
oh my God,
historically,
yes.
I mean, he makes somebody like, you know, the late Rockefeller look like a far left liberal, right? So it's just to our point that we started out with today. This is how much things have shifted.
It's shifted beyond belief. So he can win. He can win. He's doing okay financially. It's going to be, as they love to say,
South Jersey?
Yes, that I do know. I'm telling you, he's going to win South Jersey. It's going to be a narrow pathway, and he has to win South Jersey well, and then he has to win a couple other, like Monmouth and some other states that way down south consider Central Jersey.
Right, I was going to say. I'm looking to see if anybody from Monmouth's here, but that's North Jersey.
Yeah, there you go. and he's got to win a couple of flippables. States that could go, counties that could go either way. Counties that go either way. And I think there's a real chance for a surprise, and it would be a good surprise. So I do support him, and it would be good for New Jersey. We're spending money like there's no tomorrow. We are a sanctuary state. We have sanctuary cities. And the governor himself has said he wants to go the route of California. Look what's happening in California. How can you even use that as an example? I mean, we're going to lose not only our country, we're going to lose our state if we keep going in this direction. I mean, we're just doing the wrong things in the wrong places at the wrong times.
Has Governor Murphy talked to you?
Yes, we have. We have talked to a little bit. It is. The one
thing.
Because
politics can be a little rough in front of the cameras, but you can still have a working relationship. But he said some pretty nasty things.
He sure did. It's cordial in that. He even sent me a text when he heard about this whole thing with my wife being threatened and all that. So he's a nice guy when you talk to him. He's got a big smile. But then on the other hand, with businesses that were struggling, there was so much hubris. He was so arrogant about it, well, then they're going to have to get into a different business, or, they're going to have to do, they're going to have to get unemployment. Why?
It's almost like he's got this strange emotional detachment.
Yes.
He's in governor mode. Whether it be the businesses that suffered, whether it be Katie Brennan when she had emailed him about that situation that was in the newspapers a little while ago, and he said we're on it, and then nothing happened. It's almost like there's two Phil Murphys. The Phil Murphy, and I give him full credit if he reached out to you, because that's more than a lot of Democrats did. But on all these other issues, just a complete lack of compassion for his people.
And you're supposed to be a Democrat. We had at the height of, and these were people that don't regularly collect unemployment, so they didn't even know what they were doing. The whole system up there was screwed up. We had 15,000 open cases just in my district, in my office alone. People that were just crying. And these weren't like regulars, because they knew how to use the systems. These were people that never really had been unemployed in their whole lives, middle-aged people, right? The MVC. I mean, how can you not? If you're a businessman or anybody, I tell you what, you and I could get together, get into state government, and straighten out the MVC probably in a month. I really believe that. I mean, this is not right. Make sure you got enough people working there. Make sure you expand the hours. Make sure you have enough locations, because you don't now, and maybe computerize a little bit more. And we keep going through this.
And
I get horror stories.
Functions of the locations.
Yes.
Like there was only one or two places, Trenton South, where you could go if you needed to get your license restored. And we know that not everybody that has a suspended license is suspended because of drinking and driving. It could be maybe there was an insurance surcharge issue where their insurance company didn't sit over.
They bought a used car from another person, a neighbor.
When West Effort was out, everybody had to go to Trenton.
Yep.
If you were in South Jersey. So to your point, you had to leave your business for a day, your family, your job, and just go stand there in line from 8 o'clock in the morning until God knows when.
And I'll never forget when they first opened it up. And let's use common sense. MVC's been closed for months at that time. It was in the summer. And you're going to open it up. And you just let people know. So people are pouring in like crazy, standing in line. No bathroom facilities, no water for them. People are fainting and collapsing on the ground. They get there at 5, 6 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they close it. Are you kidding me? You should have double or triple the amount of people you normally have, set up some special facilities, have people start at 6 a.m., have them go to 6 p.m. at least.
Yeah, weekend hours.
Weekend hours, because you got a huge backload. Now, you know with that backlog, you need to do something special. A business person would.
Absolutely.
A business person would know, hey, something's going to happen here. We better get ready for this. And so, and you want to help the public. And you know what? Those are the things that people remember a lot. They don't know all the intricacies sometimes of government or of every piece of legislation or every resolution or action that's taken, but they do know when you're putting your hand, government's putting its hand in their pocket too much. They do know that, as we all call the kitchen table issues, those are the real issues. You got to take care of people so they can have a decent life. You know, that's the other problem in New Jersey.
I'm a conservative. I believe taxes should be low, because people deserve to keep what they earn and be able to spend it, and they also can do it better than government. But if I was spending the property taxes I was spending, and at least kids were getting an education, and people weren't fainting in lines at the MVC, and New Jerseyans were getting the services they deserve from their government, I'd be a little less pissed off about it.
You're right.
But to your point, it's not happening. And I think that's a message we have to take to the suburbs this year in particular.
Absolutely.
You're spending all this money, but no one's actually getting help, no one's actually getting served.
And by the way, can we have an education system where the main focus in K-12 is to teach about history, computers, mathematics, civics, you know, all the important things that really matter? We're erasing our history. I don't know if you know, but we are. And we're teaching about other things that aren't appropriate even for some of these kids at that age. What are we doing? It is almost as if
about social justice, for instance, before you even understand the American founding,
Yep.
and I tried to explain this to a liberal friend. It's like going to calculus when you haven't even learned algebra. They need a foundation in what this country's about, what our experiment was intended to accomplish, the successes it's had, also the places in American history where we've come up short. Because like any people, anywhere, at any point in time, we have. But just throwing this propaganda at kids with no point of reference.
It's sad. So here we are, propaganda in the schools. Professors and teachers can't say what they believe. They're not getting cities like San Francisco, where they're taking the name Washington off all their buildings, all their educational buildings. We are giving tons of money to undocumented people, flying them around into hotels and motels and paying for plane fare, but our homeless veterans are just living in tents in their own filth. Is this what we're about? Is this America? It's not the America that you and I grew up in or believed in.
And for this, you get death threats.
Yeah.
You haven't said one thing today that I think 70% of Americans wouldn't shake their head and say, you know what, that makes sense. That's reasonable.
You know, and I even said, I'll give you another one. So we do the COVID vaccine, and I always want to help everybody. I'm a Christian. I believe that's a good thing to do. But first, right now, anybody who does want to be vaccinated should be vaccinated as soon as they can in America and not have to wait. And it's getting better. And that process is something that should take place before we start sending millions upon millions of dollars abroad, and we're taking care of everybody else, but we still haven't taken care of our people. And why do we pay for the World Health Organization? President Trump was right when they lie to us. Why don't we insist that China tells us the truth? Why don't we deal with China with strength, and Iran with strength, and North Korea with strength? Why are we literally almost getting down on our knees? This is America. We're a strong country. We're number one in everything. And if we're not number one in something, then we've got to get our people together and make sure that we become number one. That's what I believe. Supply chain.
And I think tying all this stuff together back to where we started today, this is the problem with the left. Not all Democrats, but the hardcore left that runs that party, they hate you more than they hate the Chinese government,
They do.
Beijing, for lying about COVID and allowing it to infect the planet, tank our economy, and kill Americans.
Isn't that bizarre?
That's the problem.
And you know what the other problem is, Matt? Major League Baseball leaves Atlanta because they're so horrified about a bill they never understood or read that just says you have to have an ID, basically. That was the huge, horrible, terrible thing about it. The President Biden doesn't even understand.
And let's also be clear, if a state in the union started, saying we're going to have a poll tax or a literacy test or something like that, you and I would be right out there marching, opposing it.
Absolutely.
There's no
Absolutely.
question.
Everybody who wants to vote should have the right to vote. We just have to make sure that it's a real vote and it's the real person. That's all.
It's you.
Just know it's you.
Doesn't matter how much
do,
money you make.
Do whatever
doesn't
you
matter
want.
Your ethnic background, but
exactly.
It just has to be you.
But here's the deal. So they're not going to be in Atlanta, and Coca-Cola's being critical. But particularly, what really got me is like Major League Baseball and these sports teams, because then they turn around and they make deals with China for sports products that they sell, sneakers, other stuff. And China is literally incarcerating Islamic people within its country, torturing them in concentration camps, killing them. But that's okay.
That's okay.
We'll do business. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's okay. And we're doing business with that. So there's no sense to this even. I don't have any comprehension of what are they thinking. Everybody's so scared. Coca-Cola's scared. Major League Baseball's scared. You know what? If I was, and I'm sure I'd be fired. I believe at a baseball game or at a football game that every player who's been so darn lucky to have that position, quite frankly, and make the money they do, you stand up, you put your hand on your heart, you pledge allegiance to this flag and to this country that has given you so much, and you can still have all your own ideas. That's a respect thing. It's a respect for the veterans. That red in the flag represent the blood that they spilled.
You have those ideas and the right to have those ideas because of the work those veterans did defending that flag. Exactly. So we've just got to get back on the beam, and that's even for a few minutes what I'm going to speak about today. Just say, man, don't be afraid. Get in there. You know, they push on you, you push back harder. And there would be a time years ago where I'd sit down with a Republican congressman, legislator, and we'd be talking about issues, and we talked about a lot of important issues today, but really that's the most important issue now for Republicans, just courage. Just having the strength to stand up, say what we believe, do it in a loving and compassionate way. Because unlike the other side, we don't hate them. We don't hate
exactly.
them.
I have no hate in my heart.
We're disappointed in them, especially Phil Murphy and some of the stuff he's doing. But we don't have the animus for them they have for us. But we need to communicate our ideas in an unafraid way. And that's, to Politico and NJ.com and all these other newspapers asking, how is Jeff Van Drew still a thing? It's because you're putting that into practice.
Yep,
It's
and they hate it. They hate it. And it cracks me up. Sometimes they almost write the same article 2 and 3 times in a row. You know what I mean? It's just some critical, which is fine. That's their right. I'm not going to.
We were critical of you for many years when you're on the other side.
Yeah,
we disagreed on stuff, but when you took a stand and you decided to change sides, I never hated you before. But then I said, you know what? That's a guy with courage. That's somebody that we should embrace.
It's the best thing I ever did, Matt. It really is. I really am. I'm a proud Republican, and I always will be, win or lose, and I'm going to win because I don't like to lose, and so I'm going to work hard.
Anybody doubts that. That's one thing everybody listening to this agrees with.
Yeah, and we're just going to keep trying to do the best we can. And finally, I would say we are on the precipice. I mean, if we don't straighten out soon, if people don't wake up, if we don't do the right thing, if the right people don't win, we're going to lose our country.
Well, we're going to keep doing what we can to make sure that doesn't happen. And I know you're going to continue to lead the charge, Congressman Jeff Van Drew.
Thank you.
Thanks again. And, we always say this, and it's kind of this perfunctory thing. You always say, best to you and your family. Really mean it in an extra special way this time. Best to you and your family.
Thank you.
You're really sticking your neck out there, and they're sticking their neck out there.
They are, and I was very proud of them.
So we're going to keep them in our prayers for strength and courage to keep sticking to it, not backing down, being an example for the rest of us.
2 of the biggest messages, and I'll end with this, that I get. 1, so many people call me up and are praying for me, which is amazing, for real. And I'm telling you, I'm not being fake here. It makes a difference. It really helps. And I have even good friends for many years that text me in the morning, something, a Bible verse or a prayer or whatever. That's a big deal. I think it's important that we do pray, actually, just because we're not going to be able to do this alone. We got a real big task ahead of us. Second thing is what people say to me a lot, and that I hear a lot, is please tell your Republican colleagues to be strong as well, not to be scared, not to just sit back and not say anything, to really come forward. Doesn't mean everybody's got to agree with everything all the time, but don't let these people scare you, unless you're completely under their control. I feel sad for some people, sometimes they have a job, they're going to say, some of the things people are getting fired for are unbelievable.
No, it's crazy, and you got to feed your family. So I
get that.
I get to a point where you need to do what you need to do.
But
to keep
other than that, speak out, speak strong. Like I say, they push on you, you push back harder.
Congressman,
thank
it's
you.
always a pleasure to
it
see
was.
you. Always good to be in your
talking
district.
to you. Thank
Hopefully
you.
with the summer
I love
coming
having you
up,
doing
we'll
it.
be down here a lot more.
You're always welcome, you know that, and I hope I see you more.
And good luck with the talk today.
I
There's a lot of Republicans in there waiting to hear from you.
There you go.
They need some help. Help them out, please.
We all do. We all do.